Well, good morning. So, before I get started, yesterday I woke up, I think as a lot of people are, my throat's killing me. And we had a wedding yesterday, and it was in the weather yesterday or last night. So I think it only exacerbated it. That's not even a word. It made it worser. And so I don't know what's going to happen. I've prepared in case, things fall apart. Every once in a while, it just feels like somebody grabs me by the throat. So we're going to do it, though, right? But because I don't feel good, you guys got to really help me this morning, okay? All right, so I'm excited to continue with you in the Joseph series. If you haven't been here, I want to do something. First of all, I want to encourage you to follow along online. I don't know if I can say more than any other story, but Joseph's story in my life has proven timely more than once for me, and what I've been facing in my life, or something I was going through at the time. I'm telling you, I cannot tell you how many times I've opened the Bible and read Joseph's story, and it has helped me in some way. And so this series, I want to tell you, I think Ronnie's done a great job of illuminating some incredible lessons from Joseph's life. And so if you've missed one, I want to encourage you, go online, check it out, and listen to it, because I just think, man, that his story is so good. It's so good for developing. So how far has Ronnie taken you? Okay. Well, first off, we talked about Jacob on the first Sunday of the series. We found out that Joseph was Jacob's favorite. He wasn't his brother's favorite, however. They plotted to kill him. They settled with selling him into slavery, and Joseph was taken to Egypt, where he was sold to a very important man named Potiphar, right? Y'all remember this? Shake your heads. Good job. Potiphar was wealthy and successful, and obviously not a fool, because he recognized immediately how great Joseph was, because Joseph was successful at everything he did. And do you remember why he was successful? Because God was with him. Exactly. God, y'all are good. You're good. It's going to help me a lot today. All right, so God was with him. So Potiphar recognized that, immediately gave him promotion. After promotion, it wasn't long when Joseph was running the whole shebang. Okay, Joseph was in charge of it all. He's running the company, he's running the farm, he's running the household. He's in charge of everything and everybody. And a matter of fact, it said, you remember last week, it said that Potiphar never had to worry about anything except for what he ate for supper. All right, does anybody want a job? Because I could use a Joseph in my life. I just imagine this life where all I'm concerned about is what I'm eating. I think that would be good. I'm just saying, applications are in my office. That's where we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up here at the very end of verse 6, and it says right here, you're going to read along with me as I tell the story. Okay, you good? Everybody good? All right, here we go. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. I know what that's like. Sorry, I couldn't help it, man. It's been that joke's been there all week. Just waiting for this morning. Verse 7, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." All right, and I got to stop for a second. I got to make sure y'all know that she's not asking him to go take a nap, okay? I know we're all adults, but I just want to make sure we understand that she wants to sleep with Joseph, okay? She wants to have sex with Joseph. And she propositioned Joseph, but I want you to look at what Joseph does. In verse 8, it says, but he refused. Now, I want to make sure you see that, but he refused. Now, this is Potiphar's wife, so she's his master as well, okay? You see that? So he refuses, and this is what he says. He goes on to explain. He says, with me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? Okay, I got quite a bit to break down. Are you guys ready? I want to break down everything that Joseph just said, make sure we get all the ins and outs of it and understand it. Okay, first off, Joseph refused. He says no to his master, but then Joseph goes on to explain his reasoning. He says, first of all, Potiphar has treated me incredibly well. Do you see that? Potiphar has treated me incredibly well. He has done so much for me. He's helped me so much. I mean, it wasn't long ago when I came into this house that I was the lowliest slave. And now look at me. He has elevated me. He's raised me up in his house to be in charge of all of it. Do you see that? He's put me in charge of everything. Potiphar trusts me. You see, he's entrusted everything. Potiphar trusts me. He trusts me with everything of his. How could I do this? He says, how could I do this wicked thing? How could I do this to him? You see that? How could I do this to this man who has treated me so well and done all of this for me? Secondly, Joseph mentions that she is, and I want to quote right here, he's withheld you from me. Now, I want to be honest with you. I've always kind of just glossed over this. I've just read through it, hadn't really thought about it. But I want to make a case right here to you. I think it was more than just understood that Joseph shouldn't sleep with Potiphar's wife. I think it was more than just understood. I think we take that for granted sometimes. I think a conversation had been had at some point between Joseph and Potiphar. Do you see what I'm saying? I think at some point they had had some sort of conversation. Perhaps he had been warned. Perhaps maybe Potiphar warned him or just they were talking about it one day and maybe Potiphar knew something about her or knew that maybe something like this had happened before, but he warns Joseph, stay away from the wife. Do you see that? He's been withheld from me. Nevertheless, Joseph knew that it wasn't okay. Lastly, though, Joseph mentions, he says, it would be a sin. And I love the way he says it. I have to just stop right here. Joseph said it would be a sin against God. And I love the way he says that because I want to make sure you see this. He's saying, in order to do what you're asking me to do, I would have to go against my God. I love the way he says that. Read along with me, verse 10. And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. It says that she spoke to him day after day. Do you think they were talking about the weather? Okay, what do you think it means when he said this? She was pursuing him day after day, right? Every single day she was pursuing Joseph. It says he refused every single day, but he also tried to not even be with her, to not be around her. Avoided her at all costs, tried every way in the world to stay away from her. In verse 11, it says, one day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants were inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, come to bed with me. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. All right, you got to see this. This is what happens. So she's been day after day after day pursuing him. And then one day she catches him and grabs him by his cloak, and she demands it. She demands that he sleep with her. And what did Joseph do? Joseph he just pulled out of the cloak and just took off running. Ran for everything he had, I believe. And I don't know what he looked like underneath that cloak, but it was about getting away from her. He ran with everything that he had. Now, I've got to stop right here in this story today because I know a lot of times we get right here, we would want to talk about the fact, we want to talk about temptation. And we want to talk about running away from temptation. Right, Grace? That's what we want to do. But today, I want to talk about this a little bit differently. I want to talk about someone in this story a little different than we normally talk about. I want to talk about Potiphar's wife, who shall remain nameless. Because we don't know what her name was. I want to talk about Potiphar's wife. Think about Joseph, man. Poor Joseph, man. He's come across some real pieces of work in his life, hasn't he? I mean, think about it, just in his young life. I mean, first off, it's Jacob, his daddy, and we found out, what kind of a card he was as he was, his father. Then we meet the brothers, and they're crooks and fiends and plot to kill their own brother and sell him into slavery. Then he's then he's with slave traders, and I'm sure they were, less than unkind. Finally, he meets a guy named Potiphar, and Potiphar's treating him well because he's doing such a great job for Potiphar. And then guess what? He comes face to face with a villain in Potiphar's wife. And you say, well, hang on. People do stuff, Is she really a villain? Well, I think she is. You say, well, Tim, maybe she developed feelings for Joseph. I don't think that's what it was, guys. This was a slave. I don't think it was about feelings. And if there were feelings, I don't know that they were necessarily good feelings. You say, well, Tim, she might have been in love with him. I could prove to you without a shadow of a doubt that she didn't love Joseph. And all I would have to do is pull a Ronnie Hodge and say, spoiler alert. Hey. I could do that and say, spoiler alert, and say, got to tell you something. All you need to know right now is that she does something so awful to Joseph that there is no case for the fact that she loved him. None. So it wasn't about feelings. It wasn't about being in love with him. I don't believe for a second that was the case. This morning I want to take some time to talk about who I think she really was. I want to take some time to talk about what I believe her motivations were and what her cruel intentions were. Are y'all good with that? Y'all okay with that? All right. First, I want to tell you what it was. Then I'm going to prove it to you. Potiphar's wife was determined to see Joseph fall. She was determined to see Joseph fall. You say, fall? What are you talking about, Tim? Let me show you. It says that when Joseph became Potiphar's slave, he became the property of another person. And it says that after some time, Potiphar's wife took notice of Joseph. I don't know how long it took, but I'm assuming over the time that Joseph grew in prominence in the household, over the promotion, I don't know exactly when it happened, but she noticed something. Well, first off, she noticed that Joseph was well-built and handsome. Okay? But that's not all she noticed. That's not all she noticed. I don't believe for a second that's all she noticed. First off, I want you to see this. I believe she saw how strapping a guy Joseph was, but she also saw how good he was. In his dealings, as she watched him work for Potiphar, as she watched him manage the household and manage the farm, manage everything that Potiphar was in control of, I'll tell you what she saw about Joseph. She saw how good he was. She saw how honorable he was. She saw how moral he was in everything he did. Don't you think? She saw that just, man, everything Joseph touched turned to gold. He couldn't seem to do any wrong. And not only that, but can't you just see her and Potiphar, getting ready for bed at night? And Potiphar just walking in after his big meal, that's the only thing he's been concerned about all day. And he's walking in there and he goes, man, I just love Joseph. He is the best. Man, he just takes care of everything for me. I tell you, I trust him so much. I trust him with everything that belongs to me. All she heard from Potiphar all the time was how great Joseph was, how good he was, how much Potiphar trusted him. Not only that, but I believe she saw Joseph's faith. Now, Ronnie's already been talking to you guys a lot in this series, and we've seen how Joseph's faith, Joseph's walk with God has played such a huge role in him being the guy that he is and him being as successful as he is. And I believe this. I believe she saw his faith in action. I believe she probably saw him praying. She probably saw how he responded to certain things, that maybe challenges, that he was facing, managing everything, problems that arose, and how he dealt with all that. She saw all of that. She saw his relationship with God. And I believe this, at some point, it just set her off. It just set her off. She just saw it and she just wanted to mess with it. I don't think it was about sleeping with him or just having him or whatever. I believe as much as anything that Potiphar's wife wanted to see the light that was Joseph extinguished. I believe that. I believe that she wanted complete and total control of his life. I want you to stay with me. You guys with me? Shake your heads, yes? She wanted complete and total control of his life. You know what I think this woman realized? This woman realized, yeah, he's my slave. I can ask him to do this. I can ask him to do that. I can ask him to do this and that and everything else, and he's got to do it. But I think she found the one piece of his life that still belonged to him, and she wanted to steal that from him. I believe that. She wanted to take that from him. It wasn't about love. In this situation, I don't believe it was all about sex. It was about being in control. And it was about seeing Joseph do something wrong. From the Bible, I believe we can take this, and I think that maybe when it started, maybe it started subtly with a flirtatious laugh, a brush of the hand, the lingering stare, or whatever on her part. But then I think we can infer that it quickly advanced in its intensity. It moved from subtlety to outright request, and then at the end of the story, we can see that she was demanding it of him. Not only did her advances grow in intensity, but they became more persistent and frequent. We see that in the story. I think it's safe to assume that there probably wasn't a passing conversation or interaction between the two of them where she did not press him or pressure him to get what she wanted. She was relentless. She refused to give in. To her, no didn't mean no. She was bent on getting what she wanted. She was determined to wear him down because she would see him falter and he would join her in her sin and do as she asked. That's what she wanted. She was determined to see him fall. She wanted to corrupt him. I want to be honest with you. She had watched Joseph for some time. You know something I believe? I believe she knew what he was going to say the moment she asked him. I believe she knew. She knew what kind of guy he was. She knew about his relationship with God. She knew how good he was. She knew how honorable he was. She knew what his answer was going to be. So it wasn't about that. It was about, I'm going to be honest with you, it was about the game. It was the game that she loved. She loved pressuring him every single day. She wanted to manipulate his life and steal the goodness in his life to get what she wanted. Now I need to tell you something. You may come across someone like this in your life one day. There is a great chance that you will come across someone who is determined to see you fall. I believe at some point in all of our lives we come in contact with someone who's determined to see us fall. They will take notice of us for some reason. And I hope that it's the goodness and the godliness they see in you. But nevertheless, it's almost like they pick you out of a crowd. You know what I mean? They're just, for some reason, they just pick you. Maybe it's born of jealousy. Maybe they just want you to be like them and do what they do. Maybe they just want to mess with you. Maybe they want to test your faith and test your God to see who it really is. But they come into your life with an agenda. They come into your life with an agenda, and it'll start off, I want to be honest with you, it'll start off with gentle persuasion. It may even be nice. And then it'll move to pushing a little bit harder. Pressing on you and pressuring you with everything that they have. I believe this. They will do everything in their power to get you to sin, to get you to do something wrong, act out of character, because these people are seeking to corrupt you. They want to get you to bend to their will. Maybe it's subconsciously. Maybe the devil's behind it and he's using them in your life. But these people won't like the good that they see in you. And they don't like the God that they see in you. And they will do everything in their power to prove that it is fraudulent, false, or fallible. That's what they'll do. They will find a focal point for their attack, and it'll be something. It'll be something maybe something that they think is a weakness, or it'll be something that they think you're unwilling to do, or maybe it's something that's not right, or it's unethical or sinful, and they will make it their mission to see you break or bend on it. Regardless of how it affects you, your family, your emotional or mental state, they will not rest until they see you fall. They want to trip you up. They want to press on it day after day. They will examine you constantly, looking closely at everything you do to see if they can find something wrong with what you do. They'll scrutinize you at every turn. Now, some of you are shaking your heads yes at me. Have you ever run across anybody like that in your life? Raise your hand if you've already met a person or two like this. Okay. All right. Don't raise it if they're sitting beside you. No, I'm just kidding. Listen. Some of you, this sounds familiar. You've run across this person. And for some reason, they noticed. It's like they noticed you. They noticed you. And they decided that there was something they wanted. And they begin to press on it day after day after day, just trying to get you to do something. I want to tell you, if you've experienced that already, I am so sorry. But if you're sitting here this morning and you've never been down the road, you've never met a mean person, and you're lucky, unbelievably lucky. But I want to tell you, you will. Eventually they'll emerge in your life. You may find yourself working with them, working for them. You may be related to them. I think those are the worst. They may come into your life as a friend. They might. They are just as likely, this person is just as likely to come into your life as a friend. Smiling and laughing. But you'll notice it. There'll be a twinge of something there that's just not right. God forbid you may end up going to church with them. I mean, I know y'all all perfect. But no, listen, I'm telling you, you can come out and contact this person anywhere, any place, anytime. Let me tell you a story. So when I started here, when I was young Pastor Tim, okay, I'm getting old. I got a lot of gray now. When I started, I was a worship leader here. And I met somebody. And this is going to be me being very careful. Well, I met somebody, and I remember, never forget the first time I ever talked to them. They came up, we had a conversation, we were talking, and I think we were talking about worship at the time, and it was all good. Well then, right at the end of the conversation, they said something, and it was a little dig, and I felt it. And I was like, that was different. That was funny. I don't know where that came from. And this is me like 22, probably 22 years old. So that was different. Walked away. Well, over the next couple of years, every time I turned around, I was having an intense conversation with this individual. And every time they came to me, it wore on me. I remember I'd hide in the back when I saw them, because I always felt like, man, why are they always coming at me? One day out here at the church, I step outside. They're standing out there with some other people. I step outside to just talk about something, and this person, it was like the dam broke, okay? And they went at me with everything they had about anything they ever thought I did wrong, how I was. I mean, you name it. And it was in front of other people. And as this person was coming at me, it dawned on me what they were doing. I mean, I'm not kidding. This is a God thing. As this is happening in front of other people, it dawns on me what's happening. They want to get me to pop off. That's what this has been about. They want me to do something. That way they can flip the script on me and say, see, he's not good. This isn't real. Because trust me, at 22 years old, the most dangerous thing on me was this right here. I mean, it was highly likely that I could say something out of character, and especially with somebody coming at me like that. But it just dawned on me. I said, man, that's exactly what's happening. They want me to do this. And so, you know what I did? I ripped out of my cloak and I took off running. Yeah, I did. I mean, not my cloak part, but I went back inside. And I told Ronnie, and Ronnie went and dealt with them later. That's a little true. I'm going to tell you, that's not the only one I've ever experienced in my life. And by the way, if you've ever, when I was a worship leader, came to me and talked to me about something, I'm not talking about you, okay? I had plenty of people come to me in love with requests and, complaints or whatever. It was fine. But I want to be honest with you, man. That's not the only one that's ever emerged in my life that just, for some reason, I can go back and look at people that wanted me to participate in their sin. I can look back at people who've tried to push me to test me, to see if the goodness in me or the godliness that they see in me is real. And I've experienced it on all fronts, and I'm going to tell you something, you will too. You will too. And they will be villains in your story. Does God love them? Absolutely. Do I believe that God wants them and wants to use them? And yeah, absolutely. But in your story, they're going to be villains. They're going to appear that way. So in light of that, what should you do? Well, I have two things, and I'm going to tell them to you quickly. Knowing that these people are going to emerge, that they're just going to come out of the woodwork for some reason. What should you do? I have two things. Number one, you got to know what's right. If you look back at our story, you look at Joseph and the way Joseph was. Joseph not only knew what was right, said what was right, but he enumerated the reasons that it was right. Do you see that in the story? He literally goes through it and says, I'm not going to do that, and here are all the reasons why. He had such a clear perspective on his life, on his relationship with God, that he knew what was right. He knew immediately, he didn't have to think about it for 30 minutes. He immediately knew what the right thing to do was. He knew just because of his relationship with God. He knew because of I think he was studied and what was right. And you say, well, Tim, how do I know? How do I make sure I know what's right? Well, I'm going to tell you, number one is the book, man, the Bible. In the book is how to live this life right. Okay? In this book is how to live this life the way God intends us to live this life. How to handle these difficult people when they emerge into our life. That's all in the book. So you got to know the book. But I want to tell you this, and you can get in that book by reading it. You can get in that book by immersing yourself in sermons and lessons and devotions and everything else you can get. And I'm telling you, that's a big deal. I want to tell you another one, though, is to surround yourself with good examples of people that live that way. You have to do that. I'm telling you, you want to know one of the biggest reasons that even in looking back at that particular situation that I told you about, looking back, you want to know why I was able to respond the way I was? Because I had people around me, Ronnie and Gerald and Mark Bagwell, and I saw how they handled situations like that when it arose in their life. I watched them all the time. And so for me, I used their example of this is what is right. This is how I should respond. This is what we should do. You see what I'm saying? So you got to know what is right. And secondly, you know what is right and you have that knowledge, that's amazing. But then you have to do it. And sometimes that's easier said than done. I'm telling you, you have to do what is right. If you know this is what God wants, if you know when you look at a situation, no, that would be unethical, or that would be immoral, or that would be just not right for me. I'm telling you, if you know that, then you have to stand firm in it and do it. Day after day, over and over, that's what you have to do. As relentless as they are in pursuing you, as relentless as they can be in trying to pressure you, you have to be more relentless in what is right. So if you know it, that's great. Make sure you do it. Does that make sense? That's as simple a sermon as it can be, guys. I mean, that is like dirt simple. And I know that. I'm telling you, it's as real as anything you'll ever experience in this world. I'm telling you. You're going to run across somebody, and for whatever reason, they're going to pick you out of a crowd, and they're going to try to mess with you. They're going to try to test you. And it's up to you to know what is right and to do what is right. Because I'm telling you, everybody is looking at your example. Okay? God is watching over us in that. And you can do it. You good? All right, let me pray for you. Father, thank you so much for bringing us here together this morning. I thank you for each and every person that's here. Father, I know this. I know that you are a good God. I know that you love every single one of us. I know that you are passionate about every single one of us coming to you and trusting in you and loving you, and I believe that with all of my heart. But God, in this world, we have a tendency, us people have a tendency to just get messed up, to get misguided and confused and And I know this, that sometimes when that happens, we just turn mean on one another. We start trying to mess with one another, and we start trying to hurt others. And I know that's what was happening in this story. I know, in Joseph's story, maybe it was, maybe it started as something, but I believe with all of my heart that it ended up just being about control. It ended up just being about somebody wanting to get somebody else to do what they wanted them to do, and it just plain and simple wasn't right, and Joseph knew it. Well, I know this. No matter what the intentions are, we're going to run across people, and they're going to have that very same motivation. They're going to have that very same focus. For whatever reason, we move into their crosshairs. And God, I pray this. Grow us. Show us what is right. Prepare us for these people. Help us to see and know and do what is right. Easily. And God, give us the courage, give us the fortitude to do it. To stand firm and not develop bitterness or hatred, or to stand angrily every single day because we run across these people, but God, to just still stand in love, but to stand in your righteousness as well, and your goodness. And God, I pray that whatever goodness they see in us, whatever godliness they see in us, that it will move them towards you, not farther away. Father, you're a great God, and I thank you for each and every person that's here. I pray that you bring them back next week for the next part of this story. And God, that you will just continue to grow us and to prepare us for the life that you have for us. In Jesus' name, and everybody says, amen. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I love y'all. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.